the stories mentioned in the Purans and the Mahabharata, etc., are actual histories, not only of this planet, but also of millions of other planets within the universe. Sometimes the history of planets beyond this world appears to such men to be unbelievable, but they do not know that different planets are not equal in all respects, and that therefore some of the historical facts derived from other planets do not correspond with the experience of this planet. Considering the different situation of different planets and also time and circumstances, there is nothing wonderful in the stories of the Qurans, nor are they legendary. We should always remember the maxim that one man's food is another man's poison. We should not therefore reject the stories and histories of the Qurans and imaginary. The great rishis like Vyas had no business putting some imaginary stories in the literature. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, historical facts selected from the histories of different planets have been depicted. It is therefore accepted by all the spiritual authorities as the Mahapuran, the spatial significance. The spatial significance of these histories is that they are all connected with activities of the Lord in a different time and atmosphere. Srila Sukadeva Goswami is the topmost personality of all the self-realized souls, and he accepted this as the subject of studies from his father, Vyasdev. Srila Vyasdev is a great authority, and the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam being so important, he delivered the message first to his great son, Srila Sukadeva Goswami. It is compared to the cream of the milk. Vedic literature is like the milk ocean of knowledge. Cream or butter is the most palatable essence of milk. And so also is Srimad Bhagavatam, for it contains all palatable, instructive, and authentic versions of different activities of the Lord and His devotees. There is no gain, however, in accepting the message of Bhagavatam from the unbelievers, atheists, and professional reciters who make a trade of Bhagavatam for the layman. It was delivered to Srila Sukadeva Goswami, and he had nothing to do with the Bhagavad business. He did not have to maintain family expenses by such trade. Srimad Bhagavatam should therefore be received from the representative of Sukadeva, who must be in the renounced order of life without family encumbrance. Milk is undoubtedly very good and nourishing, but when it's touched by the mouth of a snake, it is no longer nourishing, rather it becomes a source of death. Similarly, those who are not strictly in the Vaishnava discipline should not make a business of this Bhagavatam and become a cause of spiritual death for so many years. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that the purpose of all the Vedas is to know Him, and Srimad Bhagavatam is Lord Krishna Himself in the form of recorded knowledge. Therefore, it is the cream of all the Vedas, and it contains all historical facts of all times in relation with Sri Krishna. It is factually the essence of all histories. Text 42. Translation. Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, in his turn, delivered the Bhagavatam to the great Emperor Parikshit, who sat surrounded by sages on the bank of the Ganges, awaiting death without taking food or drink. Purport. All transcendental messages are received properly in the chain of disciplic succession. This disciplic succession is called parampara. Unless, therefore, Bhagavatam or any other Vedic literature are received through the parampara system, the reception of knowledge is not bona fide. Vyasadeva delivered the message to Sukadeva Goswami, and from Sukadeva Goswami, Sut Goswami received the message. One should therefore receive the message of Bhagavatam from Sut Goswami or from his representative and not from any irrelevant interpreter. Emperor Parikshit received the information of his death in time, and he at once left his kingdom and family and sat down on the bank of the Ganges to fast till death. All great sages, rishis, philosophers, mystics went there due to his imperial position. They offered many suggestions about his immediate duty, and at last it was settled that he would hear from Sukdev Goswami about Lord Krishna. Thus the Bhagavatam was spoken to him. Sripad Shankaracharya, who praised Mayavad philosophy and stressed the impersonal feature of the Absolute, also recommended that one must take shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, for there is no hope of gain from debating. Indirectly, Sripad Shankaracharya admitted that what he had preached in the flowery grammatical interpretations of the Vedanta Sutra cannot help one at the time of death. At the critical hour of death, one must recite the name of Govinda. This is the recommendation of all great transcendentalists. Swami had long ago stated the same truth that at the end one must remember Narayana. That is the essence of all spiritual activities. In pursuance of this eternal truth, Srimad Bhagavatam was heard by Emperor Parikshit. And it was recited by the able Sukdev Goswami. And both the speaker and the receiver of the messages of Bhagavatam were by the same medium. Text 43. Translation. This Bhagavad Puran is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arises just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode. Accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc., persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Puran. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna has his eternal dham. Just after leaving the present body, for they have completely lost sight of the ultimate aim of life. The personality of Godhead Sri Krishna appeared before us just a little prior to the beginning of Kali Yuga, and he returned to his eternal home practically at the commencement of Kali Yuga. While he was present, he exhibited everything by his different activities. He spoke the Bhagavad Gita specifically and eradicated all pretentious principles of religiosity. And prior to his departure from this material world, he empowered Sri Vyasdev through Narad to compile the messages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And thus both the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam are like torch bearers for the blind people of this age. In the other words, if man in this age of Kali want to see the real light of life, they must take to these two books only, and their aim of life will be fulfilled. Bhagavad Gita is the primary study of the Bhagavatam, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the summum bonum of life, Lord Shri Krishna personified. We must therefore accept Srimad Bhagavatam as the direct representation of Lord Krishna. One who can see Srimad Bhagavatam can see also Lord Krishna in person. They are identical. Text 44. Translation. O learned Brahmanas, when Sukadeva Goswami recited Bhagavatam there, in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention, and thus by his mercy I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I have realized it. Purport. One can certainly see directly the presence of Lord Shri Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam if one has heard it from a self-realized great soul like Sukadeva Goswami. One cannot, however, learn Bhagavatam from a bogus hired reciter whose aim of life is to earn some money out of such recitation and employ the earning in sex indulgence. No one can learn Srimad Bhagavatam who is associated with persons engaged in sex life. That is the secret of learning Bhagavatam. Nor can one learn Bhagavatam from one who interprets the text by his mundane scholarship. One has to learn Bhagavatam from the representative of Sukadeva Goswami and no one else. If one at all wants to see Lord Shri Krishna in the pages, that is the process, and there is no alternative. Sukh Goswami is a bona fide representative of Sukadeva Goswami because he wants to present the message which he received from the great learned Brahmana. Sukadeva Goswami presented Bhagavatam as he heard it from his great father. And so also Sukh Goswami is presenting Bhagavatam as he had heard it from Sukadeva Goswami. Simple hearing is not at all. One must realize the text with proper attention. The word Nivishta means that Sukh Goswami drank the juice of Bhagavatam through his ears. That is the real process of receiving Bhagavatam. One should hear with rapt attention from the real person, and then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. Nor can he be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, faring, and mating. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person, at the very beginning one can assuredly see Lord Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purpose of the first canto, third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. Chapter 4. The appearance of Sri Narad. Text 1. Translation. On hearing Sut Goswami speak thus, Sonak Muni, who was the elderly learned leader of all the rishis, engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Sut Goswami by addressing him as follows. Purport. In a meeting of learned men, where there are congratulations or addresses for the speaker, the qualification of the congratulator should be as follows. He must be the leader of the house and an elderly man. He must be vastly learned also. Shri Sonak Rishi had all these qualifications, and thus he stood up to congratulate Shri Sut Goswami when he expressed his desire to present Srimad Bhagavatam. Exactly as he heard it from Sukdev Goswami and also realized it personally. Personal realization does not mean that one should out of vanity attempt to show one's own learning by trying to surpass the previous acharya. He must have full confidence in the previous acharya, and at the same time he must realize the subject matter so nicely that he can present the matter for the particular circumstances in a suitable manner. The original purpose of the text must be maintained. No obscure meaning should be spewed out of it, yet it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. This is called realization. The leader of the assembly, Sonak, would estimate the value of the speaker, Shri Sut Goswami, simply by uttering Yadhadhitam and Yathamati, and therefore he was very glad to congratulate him in ecstasy. No learned man should be willing to hear a person who does not represent the original acharya. So the speaker and the audience were bona fide in this meeting where Bhagavatam was being recited for the second time. That should be the standard of recitation of Bhagavatam, so that the real purpose can be served without difficulty. Unless the situation is created, Bhagavatam recitation for extraneous purposes is useless labor both for the speaker and for the audience. Text 2. Translation. Sonak said, O Sut Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Sukdev Goswami. Perfect. Sut Goswami is twice addressed herein by Sonak Goswami out of great joy, because he and the member of the assembly were eager to hear the text of Bhagavatam uttered by Sukdev Goswami. They was not interested in hearing it from a bogus person who would interpret in his own way to suit his own purpose. Generally, the so-called Bhagavatam reciters are either professional readers or so-called learned impersonalists who cannot enter into the transcendental personal activities of the Supreme Person. Such impersonalists twist some meanings out of the Bhagavatam to suit and support impersonalist view, and the professional reader at once go to the 10th canto to misexplain the most confidential part of the Lord's pastimes. Neither of these reciters are bona fide persons to recite Bhagavatam. Only one who is prepared to present Bhagavatam in the light of Sukdev Goswami, and only those who are prepared to hear Sukdev Goswami and his representative are bona fide participants in the transcendental discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 3. Translation. In what period and at what place was this first begun? And why was this taken up? From where did Krishna Dvaipanya Vyas, the great sage, get the inspiration to compile this literature? Purpose. Because Srimad Bhagavatam is a special contribution of Srila Vyasadeva, there are so many inquiries of the learned Sonak Muni. It was known to them that Srila Vyasadeva had already explained the text of the Vedas in various ways up to the Mahabharata for the understanding of less intelligent women, Shudras, and fallen members of the family of twice-born men. Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental to all of them because it has nothing to do with anything mundane. So the inquiries are very intelligent and relevant. Text 4. Translation. Text 4. Translation. His Vyasadev's son was a great devotee, an equibalanced monist whose mind was always concentrated in monism. He was transcendental to mundane activities, but being unexposed, he appeared like an ignorant person. Purport. Srila Sukdev Goswami was a liberated soul, and thus he remained always alert not to be trapped by the illusory energy. In the Bhagavad Gita, this alertness is very lucidly explained. The liberated soul and the conditioned soul have different engagements. The liberated soul is always engaged in the progressive path of spiritual attainment, which is something like a dream for the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul cannot imagine the actual engagements of the liberated soul. While the conditioned soul does dreams about spiritual engagements, the liberated soul is aware. Similarly, the engagement of a conditioned soul appears to be a dream for the liberated soul. A conditioned soul and a liberated soul may apparently be on the same platform, but factually they are differently engaged, and their attention is always alert, either in sense enjoyment or in self-realization. The conditioned soul is absorbed in matter, whereas the liberated soul is completely indifferent to matter. This indifference is explained as follows. Text 5. Translation. While Sri Vyasadeva was following his son, beautiful young damsels who were bathing naked covered their bodies with clothes, although Sri Vyasadeva himself was not naked. But they had not done so when his son had passed. The sage inquired about this, and the young ladies replied that his son was purified, and when looking at them, made no distinction between male and female. But the sage made such distinctions. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita it is said, 5.18, it is said that a learned sage looks equally on a learned and gentle Brahman, a chandal, a dog, or a cow due to his spiritual vision. Srila Sukdev Goswami attained that stage. Thus he did not see a male or a female, he saw all living entities in different dress. The ladies who were bathing could understand the mind of a man simply by studying his demeanor. Just as by looking at a child, one can understand how innocent he is. Sukdev Goswami was a young boy, 16 years old, and therefore all the parts of his body were developed. He was naked also, and so were the ladies. But because Sukdev Goswami was transcendental to sex relations, he appeared very innocent. The ladies, by their spatial qualification, could sense this at once, and therefore they were not very concerned about him. But when his father passed, the ladies quickly dressed. The ladies were exactly like his children or grandchildren. Yet they reacted to the presence of Vyasadeva according to the social custom because Srila Vyasadeva played the part of a householder. A householder has to distinguish between a male and female, otherwise he cannot be a householder. One should therefore attempt to know the distinction between body and soul without any attachment for male and female. As long as such distinction is there, One should not try to become a sannyasi like Sukdev Goswami. At least theoretically, one must be convinced that a living entity is neither male nor female. The outward dress is made of matter by material nature to attract the opposite sex and thus keep one entangled in material existence. A liberated soul is above this perverted distinction. He does not distinguish between one living being and another. For him, they are all one and the same in spirit. The perfection of the spiritual vision is the liberated stage, and Srila Sukdev Goswami attained that stage. Srila Vyasdev was also in the transcendental stage, but because he was in the householder's life, he did not pretend to be a liberated soul as a matter of custom. Text 6. Translation. Srila Sukdev was the son of Vyas, recognized by the citizens when he entered the city of Hastinapur, now Delhi, after wandering in the provinces of Kuru and Jungle, appearing like a madman, dumb and retarded. Purport. The present city of Delhi was formerly known as Hastinapur because it was first established by King Hasti. Goswami Sukadev, after leaving his paternal home, was roaming like a madman, and therefore it was very difficult for the citizens to recognize him in his exalted position. The sage is not therefore recognized by sight but by hearing. One should approach a sadhu or great sage not to see but to hear him. If one is not prepared to hear the words of a sadhu, there is no profit. Sukdev Goswami was a sadhu who could speak on the transcendental activities of the Lord. He did not satisfy the whims of ordinary citizens. He was recognized when he spoke on the subject of Bhagavatam, and he never attempted jugglery like a magician. Outwardly, he appeared to be a retarded, dumb man, but in fact, he was the most elevated transcendental personality today. Text 7. Translation. How did it so happen that King Parikshit Translation. How did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas, Bhagavatam, to be sung to him? Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam is stated here as the essence of the Vedas. It is not an imaginary story as it is sometimes considered by unauthorized men. It is also called Sukh Samhita, or the Vedic hymn spoken by Sri Sukdev Goswami, the great liberated sage. Text 8. Translation. He, Sukdev Goswami, was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked, and he did this just to sanctify the residence. Purport. Sukdev Goswami met Emperor Parikshit and explained the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. He was not accustomed to stay at the householder's residence for more than half an hour at the time of milking the cow, and he would just take alms from the fortunate householder. That was to sanctify the residence by his auspicious presence. Therefore, Sukdev Goswami is an ideal preacher established in the transcendental position. From his activities, those who are in the renounced order of life and dedicated to the mission of preaching the message of Godhead should learn that they have no business with householders save and except to enlighten them in transcendental knowledge. Such asking for alms from the householder should be for the purpose of sanctifying his home. One who is in the renounced order of life should not be allured by the glamour of the householder's worldly possessions and thus become subservient to worldly man. For one who is in the renounced order of life, this is more dangerous than drinking poison and committing suicide. Text 9. Translation. It is said that Maharaj Parikshit is a great first class devotee of the Lord, and that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him. Purport. The birth of Maharaj Parikshit. Uh, the birth of Maharaj Parikshit is wonderful because in the womb of his mother he was protected by the personality of Godhead Shri Krishna. His activities are all wonderful because his chastised Kali, who was attempting to kill a cow. To kill cow means to end human civilization. He wanted to protect the cow from being killed by the great representative of sin. His death is also wonderful because he got previous notice of his death, which is wonderful for any mortal being, and thus he prepared himself for passing away by sitting down on the bank of the Ganges and hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord. During all the day, he heard Bhagavatam. He did not take food or drink, nor did he sleep a moment. So everything about him is wonderful, and his activities are worth hearing attentively. Desire is expressed hearing to hear some about him in detail. Text 10. Translation. He was a great emperor and possessed all the opulences of his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of the Ganges and fast until death? Purport. Maharaj Parikshit was the emperor of the world and all the seas and oceans, and he did not have to take the trouble to acquire such a kingdom by his own effort. He inherited it from his grandfathers Maharaj Yudhishthir and brothers. Besides that, he was doing well in the administration and was worthy of the good names of his forefathers. Consequently, there was nothing undesirable in his opulence and administration. Then why should he give up all these favorable circumstances and sit down on the bank of the Ganges, fasting till death? This is astonishing, and therefore all were eager to know the cause. Text 11. Translation. He was such a great emperor that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength, and he possessed inseparable kingly opulences. Why did he want to give up everything, including his life? Purport. There was nothing undesirable in his life. He was quite a young man and could enjoy life with power and opulence. So there was no question of retiring from active life. There was no difficulty in collecting the state taxes because he was so powerful and chivalrous that even his enemies would come to him and bow down at his feet and surrender all wealth for their own benefit. Maharaj Parikshit was a pious king. He conquered his enemies, and therefore the kingdom was full of prosperity. There was enough milk, grains, and metals, and all the rivers and mountains were full of potency. So materially everything was satisfactory. Therefore there was no question of untimely giving up his kingdom and life. The sages were eager to hear about all this. Text 12. Translation. Those who are devoted to the cause of the personality of Godhead live only for the welfare, development, and happiness of others. They do not live for any self-interest. So even though the Emperor Parikshit was free from all attachment to worldly possessions, how could he give up his mortal body, which was shelter for others? Purport. Parikshit Maharaj was an ideal king and householder because he was a devotee of the personality of God. A devotee of the Lord automatically has all good qualifications. And the emperor was a typical example of this. Firstly, he had no attachment for all the worldly opulences in his possession. But since he was king for the all-around welfare of the citizens, he was always busy in the welfare work of the public, not only for this life, but also for the next. He would not allow slaughterhouses or killing of cows. He was not a foolish and partial administrator who would arrange for the protection of one living being and allow another to be killed. Because he was a devotee of the Lord, he knew perfectly well how to conduct his administration for everyone's happiness. Men, animals, plants, and all living creatures. He was not selfishly interested. Selfishness is either self centered or self extended. Stop. His interest was to please the Supreme Truth, personality of Godhead. The king is a representative of the Supreme Lord, and therefore the king's interest must be identical with that of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord wants all living beings to be obedient to him and thereby become happy. Therefore, the king's interest is to guide all subjects back to the kingdom of God. Hence, the activities of the citizen should be so coordinated that they can at the end go back home, back to Godhead. Under the administration of a representative king, the kingdom is full of opulence. At that time, human beings need not eat animals. There are ample food grains, milk, fruit, and vegetables, so that the human beings as well as the animals can eat sumptuously and to their heart's content. If all living beings are satisfied with food and shelter and obey the prescribed rulers, there cannot be any disturbance between one living being and another. Emperor Parikshit was a worldly king, and therefore all were happy during his reign. Text 13. Translation. We know that you are expert in the meaning of all subjects, except some portions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. Purport. The difference between the Vedas and the Puranas is like between the Brahmins and the Parivratakas. The Brahmins are meant to administer some fruitive sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas, but the Parivrtakacharyas or learned preachers are meant to disseminate transcendental knowledge to one and all. As such, the Parivrtakacharyas are not always expert in pronouncing the Vedic mantras which are practiced systematically by accent and meter by the Brahmins who are meant for administering Vedic rites. Yet it should not be considered that the Brahmins are more important than the itinerant preachers. They are one and different simultaneously because they are meant for the same end in different ways. There is no difference also between the Vedic mantras and what is explained in the Purans and Itihas. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, it is mentioned in the Madhyadhina Shruti that all the Vedas, namely the Samatha, Rig, Yajur Purans, Itihas, Upanishads, etc., are emanations from the breathing of the Supreme Being. The only difference is that the Vedic mantras are mostly begun with Pranab Omkar, and it requires some training to practice the metric pronunciation of the Vedic mantras. But that does not mean that Srimad Bhagavatam is of less importance than the Vedic mantras. On the contrary, it is the ripened fruit of all the Vedas, as stated before. Besides that, the most perfectly liberated soul, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, is absorbed in the duties of the Bhagavatam, although he is already self-realized. Srila Sukadeva Goswami is following his footsteps, and therefore his position is not the least less important, because he was not expert in chanting Vedic mantras with metric pronunciation, which depends more on practice than actual realization. Realization is more important than parrot-like chanting. Text 14. Translation. Sukadeva Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasdev was born to Parasar in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. Purport. There is a chronological order of the four millenniums, namely Satya, the daughter of the Vasu fisherman, and the father was a great Parasar Muni. That is the history of Vyasdev's birth. Every millennium is divided into three periods, and each period is called a Sandhya. Vyasdev appeared in the third Sandhya of that particular age. Text 15. Translation. Once upon a time, he, Vyasdev, as the sun rose, took his morning ablution in the waters of the Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate. Purport. The river Saraswati is flowing in the Badrikashram area of the Himalayas. So the place indicated here is Sameprash in Badrikashram, where Sri Vyasdev is residing. Text 16. Translation. The great sage Vyasdev saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to unseen forces in the course of time. Purport. The great sages like Vyasdev are liberated souls and therefore they can see clearly past and future. Thus he could see the future anomalies in the Kali age, and accordingly he made arrangement for the people in general so that they can execute a progressive life in this age, which is full of darkness. The people in general in this age of Kali are too much interested in matter which is temporary. Because of ignorance, they are unable to evaluate the assets of life and be enlightened in spiritual knowledge. Text 17 and 18. Translation. The great sage, who was fully equipped in knowledge, could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus he contemplated for the welfare of man in all statuses and orders of life. Purport. The unmanifested forces of time are so powerful that they reduce all matter to oblivion in due course. In Kali Yuga, the last millennium of the round of four millenniums, the power of all material objects deteriorates by the influence of time. In this age, the duration of the material body of the people in general is much reduced, and so is the memory. The action of matter has also not so much incentive. The land does not produce food grains in the same proportion as it did in other ages. The cow does not give us much milk as it is used to give formerly. The production of vegetables and food is less than before. As such, all living beings, both man and animals, do not have sumptuous, nourishing food. Due to want of so many necessities of life, naturally the duration of life is reduced, the memory is short, intelligence is meager, mutual dealings are full of hypocrisy and so on. The great sage Vyasdev could see this by his transcendental vision, as an astrologer can see the future fate of a man, or an astronomer can foretell the solar and nuclear eclipses. Those liberated souls who can see through the scriptures can foretell the future of all mankind. They can see this due to their sharp vision of spiritual attainment. And all such transcendentalists who are naturally devotees of the Lord are always eager to render welfare service to the people in general. They are the real friends of the people in general, not the so-called public leaders who are unable to see what is going to happen 5 minutes ahead. In this age, the people in general as well as their so-called leaders are all unlucky fellows, faithless in spiritual knowledge and influenced by the age of Kali. They are always disturbed by various diseases. For example, in the present age, there are so many TB patients and TB hospitals. But formerly this was not so, because the time was not so unfavorable. The unfortunate men of this age are always reluctant to give a reception to the transcendentalists who are representatives of Srila Vyasdev and selfless workers, always busy in planning something which may help everyone in all statuses and orders of life. The greatest philanthropists are those transcendentalists who represent the mission of Vyas, Narad, Madhav, Chaitanya, Rup, Saraswati, etc. They are all one and the same. The personalities may be different, but the aim of the mission is one, and the same, namely to deliver the fallen souls back home, back to Godhead. Text 19, translation. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were the means by which the people's occupations could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into four in order to expand them among men. Purpose. Formerly there was only the Veda of the name Yajur, and the four divisions of sacrifices were there specifically mentioned. But to make them more easily performable, the Veda was divided into four divisions of sacrifice, just to purify the occupational service of the four orders. Above the four Vedas, namely Rig, Yajur, Sam, and Athar, there are the Puran, the Mahabharata, the Samhitas, etc., which are known as the fifth Veda. Shri Vyasadeva and his many disciples were all historical personalities, and they were very kind and sympathetic toward the fallen souls of the age of Kali. As such, the Purans and Mahabharata were made from related historical facts which explain the teaching of the four Vedas. There is no point in doubting the authority of the Purans and Mahabharata as parts and parcels of the Vedas. In the Chandogya Upanishad, the Purans and Mahabharata, generally known as histories, are mentioned as the fifth Veda. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, that is the way of asserting the respective values of the revealed scriptures. Text 20. Translation. The four divisions of the original sources of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately, but the historical facts and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the fifth Veda. Text 21. Translation. After the Veda were divided into four divisions, Paila Rishi became the professors of the Rig Veda, Jaimini the professor of the Sam Veda, and Vaishampayana alone become glorified by the Yajur Veda. Purport. The different Vedas were entrusted to different learned scholars for development in various ways. Text 22. Translation. The Sumantu Muni Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with the Atharva Veda, and my father, Romharshan, was entrusted with the Purans and historical reports. Purport. In the Shruti mantras also it stated that Angira Muni, who strictly followed the rigid principles of the Atharva Veda, was the leader of the followers of the Atharva Veda. Text 22. Text 23. Translation. All these learned scholars in their turn rendered their entrusted Vedas unto their many disciples, grand disciples, and great grand disciples. And thus the respective branches of the followers of the Vedas came into being. Purpose. The original source of knowledge is the Vedas. There are no branches of knowledge, either mundane or transcendental, which do not belong to the original text of the Vedas. They have simply been developed into different branches. They were originally rendered by great respectable and learned professors. In other words, the Vedic knowledge, broken into different branches by different disciplines and stations, it has been distributed all over the world. No one therefore can claim independent knowledge beyond the Vedas. Text 24. Translation. Thus the great sage Vyasadeva, who is very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so they might be assimilated by less intellectual men. Purport. The Veda is one, and the reason for its division in many parts are explained herewith. The seed of all knowledge, or the Veda, is not a subject matter which can easily be understood by an ordinary man. There is a stricture that no one should try to learn the Vedas who is not a qualified Brahmana. This stricture has been wrongly interpreted in so many ways. A class of men who claim Brahmanical qualification simply by their birthright in the family of a Brahman claim that the study of the Vedas is a monopoly of the Brahman caste only. Another section of the people take this as injustice to members of other castes who do not happen to be birth in a Brahmana family. But both of them are misguided. The Vedas are subject to be explained even to Brahmaji by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the subject matter is understood by persons with exceptional qualities of goodness. Persons who are in the mode of passion and ignorance are unable to understand the subject matter of the Vedas. The ultimate goal of Vedic knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. This personality is very rarely understood by those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance. In the Satyug, everyone was situated in the mode of goodness. Gradually, the mode of goodness declined during the Treta and Dwapar yugs, and the general mass of people became corrupt. In the present age, the mode of goodness is almost nil, and so for the general mass of people, the kind-hearted, powerful sage of Srila Vyasdev divided the Vedas in various ways so that they may be practically followed by less intelligent persons in the modes of passion and ignorance. It is explained in the next book as follows. Text 25. Translation. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable man to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus he compiled a great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women, laborers, and friends of the twice born. Purport. The friends of the twice born families are those who are born in the families of Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, or the spiritually cultured family, but who themselves are not equal to their forefathers. Such descendants are not recognized as such for want of purificatory achievements. The purificatory activities begin even before the birth of a child, and the seed-giving reformatory process is called Garbhadhan Sanskar. One who has not undergone such Garbhadhan Sanskar or spiritual family planning is not accepted as being of an actual twice-born family. The Garbhadhan Sanskar is followed by other purificatory processes, out of which the sacred thread ceremony is one. This is performed at the time of spiritual initiation. After this particular sanskar, one is rightly called twice born. One birth is calculated during the seed giving sanskar, and the second birth is calculated at the time of spiritual initiation. One who has been able to undergo such important sanskars can be called a bona fide twice born. If the father and mother do not undertake the process of spiritual family planning and simply beget children out of passion only, their children are called Dvij Bandhu. These Dvij Bandhus are certainly not as intelligent as the children of the regular twice born families. The Dvij Bandhus are classified with the Shudras and the women class, who are by nature less intelligent. The Shudras and the women class do not have to undergo any sanskar save and accept the ceremony of marriage. The less intelligent classes of man, namely women, Shudra, and unqualified sons, just last paragraph. To understand the purpose of the transcendental Vedas, for them the Mahabharata was prepared. The purpose of the Mahabharata is to administer the purpose of the Vedas, and therefore within this Mahabharata, the summary Veda of Bhagavad Gita is placed. The less intelligent are more interested in stories than in philosophy, and therefore the philosophy of the Vedas in the form of Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Lord Krishna. Vyasdev and Lord Krishna are both on the transcendental plane, and therefore they collaborated in doing good to the fallen souls of the sage. The Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all Vedic knowledge. It is the first book of spiritual values, as the Upanishads are. The Vedanta philosophy is the subject matter for study by the spiritual graduates. Only the postgraduate spiritual student can enter into the spiritual or devotional service of the Lord. It is the great science, and the great professor is the Lord Krishna himself in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And persons who are empowered by him can initiate others in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Swami, Swami,